At Adara, we believe that every single person on the planet has the same right to essential service delivery, health and education, no matter where they're born. And everything that the Adara Group does and the structure that we have is formed around that belief. So we are an unusual organisation in that we're quite a large international not-for-profit with 2 corporate advice businesses embedded in them, entirely for-purpose businesses, and their sole purpose is to generate revenue for our work with people in extreme poverty. So our tagline is Bridging Worlds because we make our money working with some of the most advantaged people on the planet. You know, we're Wall Street investment banker, corporate advice type people, and we spend our money by implementing service delivery to some of the most disadvantaged people on the planet, health and education service delivery. So we're truly a hybrid, we truly bridge worlds, and it's been a 20-year journey of joy and tears to get here, winding journey of joy and tears, but we stand now proud of what we've achieved. We touch 50,000 people in extreme poverty year on year, every year, and countless more through the knowledge sharing work. And our businesses have been the cornerstone funders of the work. We've also had amazing people who've stood with us as donors, but because of our businesses, we've been able to put 100 cents in the dollar that any donor has given us straight to our projects, because our businesses cover all core support, all admin, all research, all emergency work. So we're an unusual organisation, but proudly and thrilled to be standing here 20 years in. We actually themed this year a year of gratitude because we're so incredibly grateful to everybody who's helped us get to this point. We are specialists in 2 areas, so we're known globally as specialists in 2 areas, and if you like, we think about it as we're 100 miles deep on this work and 1 mile wide. So maternal newborn child health, we are amongst the world's leading experts in care to preterm and low birth weight babies in places without consistent electricity supply. And the centre of excellence for us for that work is in Uganda, in remote rural Uganda. But the knowledge sharing and the impact of that work is much wider than just that country. The other limb of real specialty and area of focus for us has been really remote community development work, and when I say remote, I mean 25 days walk from a road remote, and that work exhibits in Nepal, and particularly on the Nepali-Tibetan border. Loosely health and education, but holistic service delivery to people in very remote places in extreme poverty. But both of those areas and countries serve, the service delivery is there, but the work, because of the knowledge sharing work that we now do, because we've modelled the way that this work is done with our deep teams on the ground, now impacts many more lives around the world. Social justice should be at the heart of everything that we do. If we're lucky enough to be born in a part of the world where we have access to things that in other places people would never dream of. So, you know, I can't imagine a life that wasn't about social justice. You know, 750 million people in the world every single day are living in extreme poverty. And just because I was lucky enough to be born a Kiwi girl, I get not to be in that situation and to do something about it. So my philosophy around social justice is it's an emergency, and if we're privileged enough to have the chance to do something about it, every single day we should get up and try. I believe that non-profit work or connection to community is not just something you should do at the end of a great career. To me, it's not an ancillary part of a life well lived. It should be a principal part of a life well loved and lived. So to address the question, if you do want to transition out of, for instance, the private sector into the non-profit sector, the first thing I'd say is come with humility. We often believe, if we're senior in business, that we know the answer to problems in other sectors, and without question the biggest learning I've had in 20 years working in a hybrid organisation across the profit and not-for-profit sectors is I knew nothing and still am making mistakes. So the first thing is come with humility, be prepared to learn. But really the key point I'd say is don't wait. You know, why wait? You know, for the icing on the cake, the dessert of life, or actually and the core, the heart of a life well lived. You know, wherever you are, whether you're 20 or you're 80, don't wait. Get involved, but do it with humility and be ready to learn. There's huge complexity in the sector. First of all, in relation to the skills of business and bringing those into the sector, being able to use mastery for purpose, if you like, business mastery, there's huge contribution that can be made. Often it's a contribution that's made in a different way to what people expect. So a business leader doesn't necessarily come straight across to become a great non-profit leader. They may be a fantastic resource and support to build governance, finance, mentoring and leadership training. But first they have to learn the tools of development, the tools of the sector at the same time. But without doubt, you know, Adara as an organisation, we have medical anthropologists, clinicians, development specialists, investment bankers, accountants, lawyers, marketing people, comms people. We're all working together. Every single one of those people is bringing a skill to Adara that's critical in service to the poor. So the skills are really needed across all those sectors. The trick really is to just be brave enough to have the courage to take the leap. And it is an act of courage. And I think that human beings, we're all full of self-doubt. But if there's one thing I know, it's that going where your passion is and spending a life where you focus on doing the best you can do with your skills is so much more meaningful than a life walking down, you know, a boring old road that other people have walked down before you. It's true, there are financial trade-offs. The non-profit sector is about commitment to a greater good. But the way I think about it is it's about how you define success in your own life. And I think that the West, especially in the last maybe 50 years, we've kind of lost touch with what real success is, what brings us joy as people, what defines us as people, and actually it's not how big the pot of money we have is. I think everybody has to find their own truth in that, but my truth is that I want to live a life of integrity, enjoy an adventure, and at the end of it, the last thing I want to think before the Mack truck mows me down is, gee, that was fun, and did I do my best? So yes, there's a trade, but I think it's about recognising we may have lost touch with how much is enough and what constitutes a well-lived life. And certainly, you know, the joy quotient in doing something with your life that has meaning way makes up for, you know, the extra dollars that may be in your bank account if you're trekking into work every day and you're not doing something that you truly love. I'm frustrated every single day that I can't do more. I am frustrated every single day that I can't express well enough what an amazing life it is if you get a chance to use your skills to support others. I'm frustrated every single day that we can't turn the dial fast enough on support for people in need. I am not frustrated by the sector, which is full of unsung heroes who do astonishing things in an incredibly under-resourced way. I'm filled with hope and optimism by the sector. So my frustrations are all about the context, not about the sector itself. I also see huge advance in thinking and huge evolution of thinking in the sector as the private sector and the not-for-profit sector begin to realise it's all about partnership, and that's exciting. So if you have a brain that wants to be challenged, being in a sector that's evolving as fast as the philanthropic not-for-profit community, hybrid for-purpose community is evolving is nothing short of absolutely fascinating. There are so many of them. I could talk about the big ones. In the private sector, globally, I'm a huge fan of Unilever and Paul Polman. I'm a huge fan of turning the ship of powering capital into a purpose movement. The UN Global Compact movement is a great example of that. In the entrepreneurial space, I'm a real fan of Patagonia, so I'm talking globally, but just in Australia. Who gives a crap? Thank you, water. Adara, obviously, there are so many versions of people beginning to think about how can I use business skills to affect change. The two young men who set up the laundry out of the back, orange sky, awesome. You know, we see these kids coming every day through our doors to talk about their dreams and vision for social entrepreneurship. So I'm full of admiration. We're seeing a huge amount of change. At the same time, I also just want to bookmark. I believe that we should not disparage traditional philanthropy one iota. And some of the innovative philanthropists that are coming in are suggesting maybe that they're doing it bigger and better than the groundwork that was laid by the traditional philanthropists, and I don't buy that. I believe that traditional philanthropists are the ones that really are first risk capital, and that giving is the highest order of self, and that we need to really honour that at the same time as build on it and learn from it. So to me, it's about a marriage of traditional philanthropy and then a purpose-driven non-profit and private sector that comes and stands by traditional philanthropists to try to affect change. Huge misconceptions around the sector, enormous amount of business arrogance that comes with judgment into the sector. Before Adara, I used to run a bank, and I'm often saying to business people, you know, running a bank was a cakewalk compared to running a development project. All I worried about every day, you know, was asset and liability management, return on capital, and EBIT. Now I worry every single day about cultural context, social context, gender overlay, rule of law issues, trauma-informed work. It's so complicated if you want to work with vulnerable client groups compared to the simple metrics, if you like, of running a business. So the first misconception that I would call out is that somehow people in the non-profit development social sector are nice but not capable. I've actually found more entrepreneurs and innovators who are working in some of the world's remotest places, surviving and thriving on it with situations that we wouldn't last half a day with. So that's the first misconception. Secondly, huge misconception that the not-for-profit sector generally doesn't understand governance, finance and accountability. It's always driven me crazy that there's a push against the sector on that at the same time as there's a push to limit donations or funding to an arbitrary fixed rate of administration costs. I don't understand how the private sector thinks that the non-profit sector can function without having great core support, without having brilliant administration and services to be able to service frontline teams. We know that as businesses, but for some reason we think non-profits who are doing this complex work should have, you know, really thin, underpaid staff and really thin admin. That's one of the reasons that I use my businesses to pay all that myself. I'm the admin cost debate. I stand on the side of the not-for-profit sector around that, and I think there's a lot of misconception around that. I think there's also a misconception about outcome measurement. Business people in the private sector think that vulnerable client groups or behavioural change can somehow be measured by the same outcomes and metrics we use in our businesses. Now, there's learning that can be brought across, but if there's another key learning I've had in 20 years of trying to do this work, it's that it's really, really hard to understand how you turn the dial on behavioural change, which is what you need if you actually want to inform social justice. Behavioural change can take decades. The work is really complex, and we need to be led by specialists in the work to understand what success looks like. So there's a raft of misconceptions. I came to the work with the arrogance of an A-type business person, and if there's one thing I hope I've learned in 20 years, it's to throw that arrogance out and to rethink all those underlying assumptions that the private sector has about the not-for-profit sector.